So for this build I'm using stock parts for the chassis, so stock upper bulkheads, stock lower bulkheads, stock chassis. However, I've used some RIP dye to dye it black. So this RIP dye, pretty cheap, £6. Chuck it in. I used a 3-gallon bucket with some boiling water. Put the boiling water in, put about half a bottle of the dye in, and allowed the parts to soak in it for about 15 minutes. It's made everything nice jet black, as opposed to, it's hard to see on camera, but it's sort of a dark grey, gunmetal grey. It's now made everything nice and dark. Also, you can see I put some stickers on prior to the dye, which prevents the dye from getting into the chassis under the stickers. So when you remove the stickers, it gives this ghosting effect. So I've just used stickers that I had for one of the groups I'm a member of, RC Overdose. So that's that. As for the motor install, using a TP58 series motor, which is 1225 kV custom wound motor. Again, mod 1, but machined out of solid billet material, significantly more material than you get in the stock spur gears. I was going through stock Traxxas spur gears quite regularly. I changed to a GDS 50 tooth and a Area RC 21 tooth pinion, and had quite a bit of success with that. However, running the torquier motor, I needed to upgrade my gears as well. So as you can see, nice piece of machining. Also got the upper chassis brace. Now you could also ghost in names and put stickers on here as well. However, I didn't have anything quite small enough. I appreciate that the ones on the chassis are probably not going to get seen that well when the truck's done, but they are still there, so it's a nice added feature to have. So there's going to be some chassis trimming to do where the motor drops in. The motor's just resting on this plate here, which would normally be the ESC plate. So in order for that to fit nicely, I'm going to have to trim these supports here and then trim into the chassis plate slightly. I'm undecided at the minute, but I might, as this will put a hole right through to the centre drive shaft, I think I might make a little plate to go across the bottom, utilising these two screw holes here, that they're now not going to be used. They'd ordinarily be used for the ESC. I get a stock ESC. So ordinarily they'd be used to bolt your stock ESC down. So as they're not being utilised from the back, could use them, manufacture a little plate to go in here, and then I've still got some protection from any debris that's flying up from the drive shaft, or sending debris down the other way, down each end here, which goes straight into the pinion part of your diff. Okay, for the ESC on this build, I'm using a Hobbywing Max 5 ESC, 200 amps, designed for 1/5 scale vehicles. In my previous one with the stock motor, I was running the Max 6, which I got on very well with, performed very well. However, with the bigger motor, more current draw, I'm going for the bigger ESC. Now the downfall of the bigger ESC is it won't bolt directly into the chassis. Now that's not really an issue anyway, because with the bigger motor I'm covering up about 40% of the space where the ESC would be anyway. So got a stock ESC and we'll just do a size comparison. Okay, so this is the stock BXL8S ESC. and this is the Hobbywing ESC. As you can see, very similar in width, but probably a good 20%, 25% longer, and similar in height. And the main differences is you've got 8-gauge cable as opposed to Traxxas using 10-gauge cable. Now, one thing you need to bear in mind with this is what connectors you're using. So these are brilliant with Castle Creations connectors for 6.5mm bullets. Normal bullets I work well with. XT90s they work well with. If you use shrouded XT90s, you have to trim the shroud in order to allow this to travel through it. So this is what I mean by a shrouded one. So these are the RC Logic anti-spark plugs, which work very well. However, anyone with Hobbywing ESCs have anti-spark built into them anyway, so these are unnecessary. They've got these little shrouds on the top. The hole in the top there is not big enough to take 8-gauge cable, so that either needs trimming or leaving off and just using heat shrink. There's a lot of debate on mounting a Max 5 ESC. There's several different ways that I've seen people doing it. No personal preference myself. I've heard people trying to sink them down low, and I've seen some very nice installations where they've been put in here using the stock motor. However, because I'm not running the stock motor, that's not going to work. So I've bought a mounting plate, which has also come from Glass Loaner RC. You've got 4 holes in the bottom of the plate, 4 holes in the bottom of the ESC. So the ESC bolts to the plate. When it's all finally done and dusted, the ESC will mount nicely on the top above the motor. Now, there's some debate over people saying that this raises the centre of gravity and this truck is already top heavy. Now, I've not really found any problems at all on the stock setup with this truck being too heavy. Certainly nothing that you can't adjust in the shocks. However, because I'm now running this new motor, which is significantly bigger than the stock motor weighs 642 grams. This weighs 1450 grams. So I've got more than double the weight. So I've got a significant amount more weight than what I've got in the ESC. And because that's sunk down low, then that should counteract any top heavy issues that might occur from mounting an ESC up high. But as I say, I don't think it's anything to be concerned with anyway. The ESC is below these shock towers, which is also one of the main concerns. Yeah, if it was up above these shock towers, then I might be concerned putting a high grade piece of electronics where it's going to get bashed. However, the chances of hitting that are very unlikely. Okay, so hubs, knuckles and caster blocks for this build. I'm using Integi or Integi, depending on how you want to pronounce it. These are the second lot that I've ordered. The first lot I ordered was from a company called Area RC. When they arrived, I'll add some pictures in this. The machining on them was extremely poor. They were full of defects, full of lumps, bits weren't square, the holes and things weren't drilled out properly, things that were threaded weren't threaded correctly, and they were just generally not particularly nice. So we'll have a look at these. So caster block for the front. Now I've gone for silver and everything. Main reason being that where I run is quite gravelly, and the gravel kicks up and scratches things. So if I have coloured anodised parts, they tend to look pretty sloppy pretty quickly. So first inspections, these don't seem too bad. There's a few little nicks and marks and things in them. I guess everything, as we find these days, is made down to a price. So that's one of the caster blocks. Okay, so caster block and steering knuckle, so it fits on the vehicle. This is the inner piece. You've got your axle going through and coming out here. Now, as for bearings, I've personally not had a great deal of luck with stock bearings, especially in the knuckles. They seem to break extremely easy. As a result, I've decided to spend a fair bit of money on high quality bearings. So I've gone for Enduro hybrid bearings. Okay, so these Enduro hybrid bearings. Did a lot of research into the bearings before buying them. Yeah, it's one of these things. It's if you spend a lot of money on a truck, and it's obviously well worth spending money on good bearings. So these are the outer bearings. And inner bearings. So what I was finding, and it was a combination of the stock hubs causing a problem and the stock bearings, was particularly this inner bearing was shattering. The seal ring was coming out from the stock bearings. The bearing was becoming misshapen, getting water ingress, various problems. I think that was partly because the hub carriers were flexing, therefore damaging the bearing. As a result of the inner bearing failing, the outer bearing also then failed. It was a regular thing that these actually become seized, so it causes various problems. Okay, so for battery hold downs, I'm not using these standard battery hold down straps, because for my large batteries that I use, Gens 8, they're a little bit tight. So these are the batteries that I normally run. 6,750 milliamp hour, and they're a 70C constant, 120C burst. Well, ideally, I want to be mounting them in this way. However, with the stock hold downs, they don't fit. They have to go in on their side, and going in on their side snags this cable here. If I do it with the red positive side, that'll be easier to see. And although they do fit in, it just crimps that cable, which in an ideal world you don't want to be doing. So from Mad Max, from Nathan, I've got a set of these carbon battery hold down plates. So these go down in the bottom, a set of spaces go underneath to raise it up, and you put Velcro straps underneath and coming up and strap your batteries in that way. Not only that, once they're all done and fitted, the black carbon suits quite nicely with the sort of theme I'm going with the black chassis. Okay, so wheels on this build, gone for Mad Max land grippers. I've already tested these on one of my other X-maxes. They perform fairly well. They hooked up well. The main thing is they're nice and light. They are slightly lighter than the stock wheels, and they're slightly bigger than the stock wheels. Let's grab a stock wheels comparison. We'll do a side by side. So this is a stock AS, and this is a Mad Max land gripper. As you can see, slightly bigger diameter, similar width. There's not a lot in it width wise, but these are actually lighter than what these stock ones are. And the main thing is it's a slightly harder compound, so I wasn't getting the same ballooning problems that I was getting with this. And in the corners, these were holding their shape significantly better. Now for hookup, for guys that are running in wet conditions like I am sometimes, these Proline Badlands are still by far the best wheel tyre combination for hooking up in the dirt, because of these big nodules. They just grip like crazy. However, these are almost double the weight of these, and as a result, if you're bashing hard at them, they will just break A-arms, knuckles extremely easily. So good for running on wet grass, in the woods, things like that. But if you're jumping about, these are definitely the go-to wheel tyre. Now, standard Traxxas are 23mm hex, so they're the same. The Traxxas ones have got these splined hexes on. The Proline have just gone, so they haven't got the splines, they've just got the hex, but it's a really solid hex as opposed to the standard. It's probably hard to see, but that's quite thin, whereas Proline's got quite a thick wall. However, what blows them out of the water is these. So these have now got the same size hex, but we've got a significantly more amount of material around here, significantly more material, and we've got this massive metal band to add strength as well. Now, as you can probably spot, the centre hole is bigger on these than what it is on stock or the Proline. It's because with these wheels and tyres, you get a set of these lug nuts. Now, these lug nuts are extremely heavy duty. They're all more than double the size of the Traxxas ones, extremely thick. Now this round section here actually goes through the wheel and tyre, so then runs flat on the back here and then up against the bolt on the hub. So it means that rather than just riding on plastic, that these wheel and tyre hubs are actually running on metal as well. So you've got metal here. If I grab a hub, screw this on roughly, so that's screwed right in, you've only got about a mil or so gap. So the hub is then using this plastic rider to rotate, but the weight of the wheel is still sitting on metal, and it's significantly larger. If I put the hex in without it, you can see the sort of difference with that, and then that slots over, screws into the hub. It also gives a really nice finish when it's done. Okay, so my steering assembly setup for this build is going to be the Traxxas 2085X uprated high torque metal geared steering servo for the X-maxx. I do have a 5th scale steering servo on order that hasn't come in yet, so when that does come in, I should be fitting that in one of my trucks, and I shall do a comparison with both trucks running at the same time and see what I get better performance out of. Now I'm running GDS upper brace. I've only seen a couple of people break this, however, with the amount of metal parts I'm putting in, the lack of flex, I thought this was well worthwhile upgrading to, and it's got a nice machine finish. And for my actual main steering assembly, I've gone for Mad Max steering assembly, which comes with bearings, servo saver, basically all the parts that you need, with the exception of the main link to the servo and the servo horn. The servo horn that I'm going to be running is an Area RC, and again, that's a billet machined servo head. I'll get these out and you can have a look. Okay, so these seem, first impressions, fairly good quality. Seeing you've got different rates of spring, servo spring. I'm not sure what I'm going to run yet, whether I'm going to run these or whether I'll run the spring that comes with the uprated servo. I'm more than likely going to run these springs initially because they're the ones that come with the steering setup, so therefore they're hopefully the appropriate ones for that setup. Okay, so I'll just do a quick mock-up, let you see how this steering assembly is going to look when it's actually together. Okay, so there's there's no instructions for this. However, there are these metal bushings that, to me, look like they'd sit nicely in those bearings and allow this to ride nicely on the bearings. There's some countersunk screws. All the screws come with it, and they're all stainless steel. So again, another good option. They're not going to be high tensile for the kind of money that the steering kit was. However, in the steering, you shouldn't need high tensile stuff. Okay, so I'm just going to do these up loosely initially, and they'll all be done with Loctite when it's done properly. Okay, again, 2 more. Screw them in. On there. Getting that M3 countersunk. So that does feel extremely smooth, well put together. There's no, excessive movement other than what you should expect to have. Okay, so steering servo, the uprated 2085X. Let's take a look at that. So it should be effectively a direct bolt-in replacement for the stock. So exactly the same body. It's got the same heatsink mount as the stock. It's got a metal horn. It's supposed to be more torquey. I think it's about 30% more torque. It's metal geared and it's supposed to be waterproof. However, I've found with a lot of Traxxas servos, they're not waterproofed correctly from the factory, and a lot of these seals aren't greased up properly. So I shall be greasing all this prior to installing.